Every company needs an accountant.
Take opportunities, be open to learning, have fun.
Have fun.
Yeah.
Wow, I actually have more insight on accounting.
Welcome to this episode of the Accounting Plus podcast. I am your host, Hunter Walden, and today's episode is Global Perspectives. I have with me today two phenomenal people. I have So Fuller, who is the Director of Methodology Enablement at BDO, as well as Kwame Nkrumah Ababil, who is a senior at Ernst & Young. How are you guys feeling today?
Great, thanks for having us.
But thank you guys for being here. I'm excited to really get into today's conversation and really see what wisdom and experiences you guys have to share with our viewers. So to start off, who is someone that has possibly influenced you guys?
I didn't really know anybody in accountancy, let alone the corporate world. But definitely along my journey, I've got a lot of mentors and people that I look up to and seek for advice.
I think similar to Sophia, I can't say that there's just one person that necessarily defined my career path in accounting. But anytime I do think back, there's always one voice that keeps ringing in my head, which is my high school accounting teacher. He kept mentioning to us that it was his desire that one of his students will make it to work in a globally recognized accounting institution like EY. And I feel like that's something that's always been on the back of my mind as I've gone along.
So what would you say is some barriers that you faced in the process of not only getting to an accounting firm, but excelling at a Big Four accounting firm?
I'll say the biggest barrier I would say probably is my background educationally. So I didn't go to a big name school where a lot of recruiting is usually done by these institutions, which is fair because they have to go to schools where they're going to get a greater number of students or a wider pool to select from. So I had to be very intentional about networking, going to career fairs, going to networking events, exchanging LinkedIns, developing my LinkedIn presence, working on my resume, so that anytime I did have the opportunity to engage with career professionals, I was able to make a good first impression.
So would you say you faced any barriers in your tenure as an accountant?
I was the first in my family, or in my direct family, to go to university. So a lot of it was being the first, and definitely some of it was being the first and the only.
Right.
I didn't necessarily see that was a barrier that was put on me, but it did perhaps hold back my confidence a bit when I initially started in accountancy, because I didn't see people who looked like me. Right. So I wasn't necessarily sure how far I could go, but I've proved myself well. So.
Yes. Yeah, no, it's definitely good to see similar faces in this profession growing, because representation is key. And being able to represent our people and represent well at that is something that is very promising for these next upcoming generations. So I commend the both of you. Tell us about a personal hobby that you have that may correlate to your global experience.
I love to read.
Okay.
I know that's not an exciting hobby like skydiving necessarily, but reading is the best way to experience a lot of different worlds. Both real and imaginary, to learn different ways of speaking, different ways to articulate yourself, even different ways to problem solve.
Right. What else you comment?
I'm very much a people person, so I love meeting new people. So I usually find myself helping or volunteering to help organize events that bring people together. So any sort of networking, meeting spaces that connect people to resources or other networks is something that I like to be involved with.
Have you guys' travel experiences influenced your accounting career or vice versa? And what would you say is an experience that kind of stands out in the traveling that you've done as an accountant?
I would say it's both. So sometimes you have to go where the work and the opportunities are. So you travel because you have to, because that's part of the job. But I definitely think that some of where I've traveled has influenced where I want to go, or where I don't want to go, more importantly sometimes. And the other thing I would say is the most memorable to me was not necessarily to do with the job I do now, but as part of my degree, you had to do a year abroad, and I chose to spend it partly on a tropical island, partly in Germany. Neither one was in a city, which was what I was used to living. in, and I did it as a challenge to myself to see if I could do it.
Right.
Because I live independently in another place, and it worked. And so that taught myself that I don't have any boundaries. If there's an opportunity I want to take to travel through work, that I can do it,
Right.
regardless of how extreme that culture adjustment might be or be perceived to be.
Yeah, it's crazy how when you really put your mind to something, you feel like what is impossible is really easily achievable. So
Yes.
I love to hear that experience. How about yourself, Kwame?
I'll say accounting has indirectly led to many of my travels. I mean, I came to the US to pursue an education year in accounting. I did double major in accounting and economics, but then I've continued to further that education through professional experience here at EY. I studied studying accounting in high school in Ghana. So that cross-cultural international bridge is also something that accounting has given me the opportunity to do. I'll say even being here in Vegas, it's an opportunity that accounting opened up to me as well. So definitely it's a profession that has really exposed me to the opportunities like these.
Would you say the accounting world has had an influence on you guys' travel, or y'all are more travelers with or without accounting?
Having a job that basically exists in every country in some form makes it a lot easier to do the traveling. If I'd stuck with languages, which was my degree, there's only certain countries I could have traveled to, and there's only certain jobs that would have led to. Accountancy is kind of a more universal language, and it's constantly changing and new, and there's developments in countries that aren't happening in other countries. So I feel like it definitely lends itself as a career to traveling more so than others that I've seen.
I would say similar to Soph. I think that accounting, I started my accounting career on the onset of COVID, so I haven't had the opportunity to do as much travels because the world has learned that you don't need to travel to across the country to have a 30-minute business meeting. You could just do it from the comfort of your home. But I'll say that the skill of accounting or being well-versed in accounting is something that is needed or required pretty much in all the four corners of the earth, right? So I think that that's something that attracted me to the profession initially, where I was excited by the opportunity to be able to collaborate with people across geographies, across jurisdictions. But even still, even with the onset of COVID, I think working for an institution like Ernst & Young provides me opportunities to be able to travel to other Ernst & Young offices all over the world.
Right. So what would you say excites you guys most about the global reach of accounting? And what have you seen in your respective fields?
So for me, it's the opportunity, especially when we think of things like ESG.
Yeah.
Like there are parts of the world where they're 10 years ahead of the rest of the world. And so we're looking to them and people there to help light the way. And there's other places where the US is further advanced in that form of accounting, so we're looking to them. So I feel it's becoming a smaller world for accountancy, and we're looking for the people who have the skills wherever they may be. And to Kwame's point, we don't necessarily have to physically move you. We can get to you, but the physical movement is important. Like, we don't want to lose the connections that we have as people, which is so important to accountancy too. I think there's a myth that it's all like behind a screen, but it's not. It's really about people.
Right, and you spoke to how there's a stereotype of it just being behind the screen, and I feel like with the recent global pandemic, it has really helped most professions, but especially accounting, turn more remote. So how would you say being able to work remote has correlated to being able to even possibly travel more as an accountant?
So I'm actually 100% remote now. Personally, that works for me. I have a family. I live quite rurally, so it would not be conducive to me to drive in every day. But I have a global role, so I can't just sit in my room and do whatever I want. So we do still have to get together at a global level and have meetings once in a while, nothing too frequent, but the amount of work and innovation you can get done in a room together versus on a Teams call once in a while where potentially you're distracted because your screen's going off, something's happening outside. I think whilst the flexibility of remote work is great and recognizes how people work, I think we cannot lose the fact that the connectivity is where things happen. So I travel more even though I'm remote.
Yeah, and I think if I were to build on that point, because people recognize the value that the increased flexibility has added to their lives, they're a little more intentional when they meet together. So now when you think about conferences or meetings being set up, agendas are more precise. It's not just, hey, we should have a touch point in this location at this specific time, but it's now more, we need to achieve this milestone. In order to achieve this milestone, we need to come together in person and have touch points to discuss where we are going. So I think in-person meetings are now more purposeful, and people are planning more intentionally about why they need to be had in the first place.
So can each of you share your journey in accounting and how it has affected your global perspective on things?
Well, like Kwame, I didn't start off in the US. I did a modern foreign languages degree, traveled with that. Then we had career fairs, and the career fairs were always aimed at the degree choice. So ours was languages. One thing I noticed was there were a lot of professional services firms there, but even the ones that weren't, so armed forces, National Health Service, they were all looking for accountants. And I was like, well, this seems like a sensible thing to do. They need languages and they need accountants, and I'll get a professional qualification that I can fall back on. And I've been falling back on that now for 16 years. Yeah. But it sort of said to me, I've got something here that I can use. I can travel, I can use my languages, but I always have this qualification. But just the variety of firms that were there and the variety of industries, we also had non-for-profit, academics, said to me, I'm not stuck doing this one thing all the time. So I have moved quite a lot in my career, whether that's laterally or complete pivots into different types of accountancy. And a lot of that has been supported by travel. So.
And I know you spoke a little more earlier on how your high school teacher really helped you into really your love for accounting and wanting to achieve certain aspirations. So what was your journey of actually attaining that dream? And because it was so valued to you, what was it like when you actually achieved it?
Yeah, so I think in high school I had very limited, given all that my accounting teacher was inspiring us to, I think I had a very limited view of accounting. I think similar to what Soph was saying, and probably like most people out there that are not familiar with the accounting industry, I presumed accounting was simply a simple bookkeeping role, recording journal entries or keeping track of ledgers, payments, income, and all of that. I think going through the years, so after 4 years of high school, GCSEs and A-levels, and then progressing into 4 years of a bachelor's degree in accounting, I've begun to understand there's so much more to the field. And even when you think about the field, whatever industry excites you. So I work in wealth and asset management, and the financial markets are something that I'm particularly interested in. And knowing how much of a key role accountants play or auditors play in building trust within the financial markets is something that I think has become more of a motivation for me, more so than what my high school teacher was saying 12 or however many years ago that was. So yeah, that's what I would say to that.
Right. Yeah, and you kind of spoke to how there's so many myths in the accounting world. So what would you say were some myths that maybe y'all thought about the accounting world that when you actually got into it, realized it was the complete opposite or something completely different?
That you need to be very good at maths. Excel is very good at maths. Yeah. You do need to have an understanding of it, but the amount that we're actually plugging in numbers and checking numbers is about this much.
Yeah.
You have to be able to communicate with people, especially with audit. You have to be able to listen and understand and take in information, analyze information, report it back. So it's definitely not all about numbers. So I think that was one thing I learned. And also there's very different fields of accountancy. There's audit, there's management accountants, there's tax, there's forensics, there's internal. All of those are under the banner of accountancy, but they're all very different roles. So I think I definitely learned that, to Kwame's point, it's not only a bookkeeper.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have too much more to add. I'm a people person, and going into accounting in my earlier years, one of my fears was that I would not be able to leverage that side of my personality in my occupation. I've found out that it's a complete opposite, right? I'm never working on an isolated project. I'm always either working with a team internally or engaging with a client externally.
Right.
And so having to engage with different type of people from different backgrounds is something that is pretty much, I can't put like a percentage to it, but if I were, I'll put this, I'm like 80% of my time is spent communicating with people either through emails or Teams meetings or Zoom calls or whatnot. So I would say that's a stereotype that definitely should no longer exist. A very client-facing role and very teams and people-oriented career.
What would you guys say were some motivations that really got y'all into pursuing accounting?
I would say the flexibility, the opportunities, especially globally. So I would have thought I'd be limited by the languages that I studied. But as an audit assistant, I did inventory counts in Italy. And as I moved up, I went to Switzerland to lead an engagement to report to group. I've been to Paris to do forensic work because that's where my languages came in useful. And then as I've got more senior, I got a secondment to the US, and then I've turned that into a permanent international transfer. So I would say what motivates me is there's constant little things I can try out at relatively low risk to me. I tried a bit of internal audit, wasn't for me. Tried a bit of learning and development, not for me. Tried a bit of methodology enablement, loved it. Loved staying in the US, and I was able to follow my passions with the support of those I work with, but at relatively, as I said, low risk. There's not many careers where you can say, I'm just going to try a bit of that for a couple of weeks, and if it doesn't work out, hopefully I see you, and if it works out, I might not come back. So I appreciate that flexibility, constant opportunities, and to really make your career what you want it to be and what works for you.
So what about you, Kwame? How would you say, what has motivated you into?
Yeah, I would say very along the lines of so very, very similar. And I think the auditing profession gives you an opportunity to do that because you're rotating teams every 3 to 4 months, right? So you're not working on the same client or in the same industry all over again. So you're getting exposed to different management styles, so how different firms are recording transactions while still obviously keeping in line with the standards and guidance that there are out there. But then you're also seeing what matters to these professionals, right? So what matters to the CEOs, what matters to the CFOs, what kind of numbers that they're really pushing for and what kind of numbers they're not focusing on as much.
Right. And so, Kwame, you've seen it from a senior level, and Soph, you've seen it from a manager level. But how would you say, how hard has it been to possibly manage certain things as a team and work collectively as a team when all you have is virtual interaction and minimal to no in-person interaction?
I think it breaks down a barrier really because we're working those different hours. You've got to kind of adjust to everybody, and you're in people's homes. I think that can't be underestimated. Right. So you get to know them in a way that perhaps you wouldn't in an office. I really love it.
Having the flexibility of working from home and being in the office makes it more enjoyable when I go into the office because I know that I chose to be here and I didn't have to be here. Right.
So, of course, the opportunity to live abroad is attractive in the U.S. today. So what would you guys say are your opportunities to live abroad in your career field, and how has that impacted you?
Yeah, I think I haven't had really an opportunity to professionally to pursue any career paths outside of the U.S., but I know that the opportunities exist. I just haven't necessarily thought about taking them as of yet. But I think that something that Soph mentioned earlier is that accounting is something that is needed everywhere. So that sort of security that you have when you're making or you're planning to make these moves, however drastic or small they may be, makes the decision a little bit easier. So having accounting as a toolkit, something to fall back on whenever you're trying to make a move, is something that has been very freeing and liberating. And the fact that I haven't moved doesn't mean that I haven't benefited from the opportunities accounting provides you to move, because any decision I make every single year to stay in Boston, Massachusetts is a decision that I'm making because I want to stay in Boston, Massachusetts, not because I'm limited professionally or through opportunities.
Right. So how important would you guys say rest is, and making sure that you're taking care of not only your physical health, but your mental health as well?
There is nothing more important, because you can have great people around you, but only you can take care of that and monitor that, and you have to, because it is so easy. For me, being remote, you can just get lost and get stuck. It is important for you, for the team that you work with, but it's also important for you to watch out for the people that you're working with. Like, are they okay? I think sometimes we can be focused inwards, and that's good, but also look around you. Like, what's the mood around you? But take care of yourself and encourage others to do so as well.
How would you say, as an African-American male in our society, you've dealt with your mental health, and how important would you say that is for you?
I'll say even more so, to build upon Soph's point, you should be intentional about how you're resting and what activities are you filling up that time away with, right? What activities that I can be doing to help me go through this right now, rather than just taking time off and not being intentional about filling that time with things that can actually help you rest and put your mind at ease.
I definitely believe that when traveling, when trying to maintain a work-life balance and still have that rest is definitely essential to not only analyze your mental health, but like you said, your team's mental health, because we fall so victim to making sure that we're good, and we don't look at what's right around us.
Yeah.
So
if the team's not good,
yeah,
you're all not good.
Yeah, there's no I in team, and each piece is important uniquely. So now transitioning into global perspectives, what are some varied career paths that are available globally?
I know not of a single role in accountancy that I haven't seen globally, is the short answer. And there continues to be more. With AI, ESG, sustainability, there is going to be more and more roles that we probably haven't even thought of yet.
Yeah, I think to build on that, I'm building on a lot of your points today. So
great points, great foundations.
I've come to understand accounting as the language of business. So whatever business operation there is out there, a really simple, basic way to break down the business is accounting. And if businesses exist all over the world, then if you have versed in the language of business, the opportunities are limitless, I would say.
As people who have worked internationally, what would you say are some unique things that you've learned that you've been able to bring home and teach people from your respective environments?
So what have I brought back home? Patience, a lot of patience with myself, with others. It has taught me diversity is far more than what we traditionally think about. So there is true diversity in thought because of people's culture. So now when I have a question, I don't just call the people that sit around me. I call another country? How would you interpret this? How would you understand this based on what's going on in where you are? So diversity of thought, and that difference is always in an assessment of what's normal to you. So the assumption that, oh, they're doing it wrong, accountancy-wise, or that doesn't feel right to me, or to assume intent. You've got to be patient and understand their point of view, and then see if and where the real conflict lies.
So what would you say are some differences in the accounting practices across the country that you've seen?
I would say it's more down to the culture of the business, the teams and the individuals, rather than saying it's broad brush to do with countries. I think it's very difficult to generalize and say, these are the differences and this is why. I think it's more apt to say there are differences within different organizations, teams, and individuals that might be to do with where they are in the country, but more than likely, I don't think it really is.
And so now we're going to transition into the advice portion of the segment. So what would you guys say are some good advice for aspiring accounting majors and aspiring people who want to go into accounting or don't even know about accounting, who not only want to learn domestically but globally as well?
So I would say I'm going to speak to the maybe the travel and abroad. But I think you need to know what you want to do, but that's quite hard. So know what you don't want to do. That's an easier thing to know. What are my boundaries? What do I definitely not want to do? I don't want to be picked up and put in XYZ position in this country. That will help narrow down your choices. Then it's all about networking and going to events. Put yourself out of your comfort zone. If something's been offered for you to go and find out more, go and find out more. Speak to people who have traveled. Don't forget that people like Kwame and myself, whilst we're in your country now, we have traveled to your country, so we're also a source.
I'll say the biggest thing that I've learned is that no two people's journeys are the same. So you have your own story. Even if you're pursuing the same career path in accounting, you have your own way you're going to get there. You have your own story and your own path you're trailblazing. So as you're going along that path, you can only control what's in front of you. So I would say just be diligent with the opportunities that are being presented to you right now. It's good to dream and have future aspirations and future goals of where you want to be and work towards them. But you want to make sure that you're doing the best with the opportunities that are in front of you right now, because you never know who is watching, and you never know which of the watchers are going to be the stepping stone you need to get to that next step. So I'll say just be diligent with whatever is in front of you right now.
Right. Yeah. And I can even say myself, I've fallen victim to even putting myself in a position where I'm planning ahead, and trying to get to a milestone of things, and then I'm locked so much into my goals and my aspirations that I fail to realize that what's in front of me is why it's called the present. And really being able to enjoy the people around you, enjoy the experiences that are being made in the moments.
And to that point, I think is make sure where you're going can actually do what you want them to do.
Right.
Like if you're becoming very focused on a very specific type of tax in a specific town in a specific industry, your ability to move out of that gets less and less and less. So to both of your points, keep your eye on the present, but don't let the present lock you in from doing something that you ultimately might like to do.
Kwame, what would you say are some good networking strategies?
I would say trial and error. Just do it. You literally just put yourself out there, try out different ways of approaching people, different ways of engaging in conversations, and learn from your mistakes. You're gonna make mistakes. You're going to have some awkward conversations, and you can only go up from there.
So one thing you spoke to that goes over a lot of people's head is documenting what you go through, documenting your experiences. So how important would you say the documentation part of it is to you?
It's very important, and the word documenting, I'm not necessarily saying you have to take a pen and a paper and, be writing it down, but just any sort of introspection or reflection as to how you feel you did, where are the areas that you didn't feel confident, you didn't feel comfortable in, is very crucial, because then you're able to go into the next meetings knowing, or next interactions, conversations knowing, hey, like, I feel comfortable in these conversations and I don't feel as much comfortable in those conversations. And maybe challenging yourself, right? So there might be some conversations where you don't feel comfortable in. Challenge yourself. How can I read more about these topics? How can I learn more about these subjects? So that if I'm ever in a room where it's brought up again, I won't have the experience I just had, right?
So, Kwame, another question for you. What are some transferable skills that you feel like are important to work internationally?
A lot of the work that we do is work that can be taught on the job, right? And so we are usually, yes, you need to know your content, you need to know your stuff, get a good education behind you. If you can, pursue some sort of certified professional education. But I think when it comes down to getting the job done, a lot of the work that we do can be taught. And so as long as you have an attitude and a posture that says, hey, I'm ready to learn, I'm ready to take the time that it takes to learn and listen and, be mentored or apply myself in an apprenticeship system, the sky's your limit.
So now a question for the both of you. How would you, for people who are watching this podcast and even students, how would they be able to connect with you guys? How can they reach you? What is y'all's method of communication?
I would say LinkedIn.
Okay.
That's the global communicator for me, and that would be the place to look for me.
Okay.
For I try to stay active on LinkedIn. It's always exciting to see new people connecting on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it looks okay. So y'all heard it first. LinkedIn. That's the best place to reach them. And would you guys say you have any final remarks, final thoughts that you just want to give to the audience, just as some food for thought, just as some jewels to close it out?
I would say I cannot recommend enough.
Yeah.
Working, living, doing the international thing. However you do it, in whatever way you manage to achieve it, it's an experience you cannot gain by any other means. And so take that opportunity. If you've got someone from a different background near you, they don't even have to be from a different country. Make sure you are welcoming, you're understanding, you're engaging. Make their experience positive as well, Don't forget that people coming there, you are now the face of your country. So be welcoming, engage, because you never know what that relationship might lead to, where they'll go and phone you up 10 years later, say, do you fancy coming over here and doing X? So just be open, because you do not know where those opportunities are really going to come from.
Be open, yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's the feet.
Yes. How about you, Kwame?
I think just understanding that whatever your first job is out of college doesn't have to be your last job or your last profession. And so don't be too scared to make some mistakes in the decision of what your first career is going to be. And as you're young, use your youth as an opportunity to learn. Use your youth as an opportunity to explore. So if it's accounting and you're unsure, you can always try, right? And if you try and you realize that this is not something that you want to do, there's a whole road ahead of you that you can pivot out of. So don't be scared to just try it out, I'll say.
And that wraps up today's episode. I just want to thank you guys again for imparting your wisdom and your experiences today. Special shout out to the Accounting Plus team for putting this podcast on and allowing this experience to really just impart wisdom. So thank you again. To jumpstart your career in accounting, visit joinaccountingplus.com.